Dear viewers, a very warm welcome to this fifth online seminar. We have today, as we declared and announced, Dr. Tanojkumar Meshram. First of all, we begin with congratulating him because he has just earned his doctorate from a prestigious school in America, Brandeis University. So congratulations, Dr. Tanoj Meshram. Are you able to hear? Congratulations, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pride and pleasure for the community to have a doctorate and you have a very amazing career that you started as an engineer and then you worked in the Indian Railways Department as a civil servant, and then you later on went on to study in IIMs and having this degree. You have this passion for learning, and you always try to bring elements of quantitative studies, qualitative analysis to your research work. So as a discussion today, you are somebody who has been working in the field for last 20-25 years, and also you are thinking about a lot of issues of the society. So today, when we are celebrating the 65th anniversary of our Dhamma Diksha, I would like to begin to have this formal introduction of yours, and after that, we would like to request you to present your ideas on this topic as to what are the future research areas for the Ambedkarite Buddhism. The word itself, Ambedkarite Buddhism, creates a kind of some kind of discussion among the people. So I think this topic is very important for not only the Buddhist in India but also throughout the world, as to how Buddhism has been an instrument of transformation, what are the intricacies of the conversion, and so on and so forth. So without taking much time, I would like to hand it over to you, Dr. Tanojkumar Meshram.
Thank you, Mangesh, Jai Bhim, and you for your generous introduction, as well as inviting me on this very important day to talk on a very important topic. I'm very happy to share my ideas on what could be the research agenda for Ambedkarite Buddhists in future. This is an elaboration of some short note I had written on Buddha Purnima about what could be a research agenda, and some of these ideas have come in the last few years when I wrote a paper on Buddhism and was trying to look at what kind of empirical work is being done on Buddhism. So in this talk, I will try to propose a scheme actually for research on Buddhism. This agenda is also important for me because now we are in 2021, and down 10 years, we will be celebrating 75 years of Buddhism. And that will be the time when we reflect, when we plan, when we act about what we think Ambedkarite Buddhism should or could be. And I believe research can play a very important role in this. This conversation I have tailored a little bit more towards the research community, as well as those people who are interested in this topic. I would probably at some point of time would like to discuss this in more local languages, or Marathi and Hindi, in the community settings, actually in more in-person settings, in more elaborate manner. But today I'm just trying to think about at a schematic level how we can take this forward. A little clarification, like you said, about what, and we often use this terminology, Ambedkarite Buddhism. I consider this is Baba Sahib Ambedkar's approach to Buddhism. Basically, there are always different schools of Buddhism. There are different approaches to Buddhism. The religion, emerges in a particular context, social, economic, political, cultural context, actually. And it also is applied in a particular context, actually. So we had that kind of a context, actually. So this Ambedkarite Buddhism could be slightly different. How far that different would be is a question of an empirical inquiry, different from a non-Ambedkarite Buddhism or Buddhism who do not follow Ambedkar's approach. Actually, there is a contestation about that. Actually, some people believe that Ambedkar's approach to Buddhism is not actually Buddhism. I do not agree with that perspective. Basically, so there is a core of Buddhism, what we believe, and then there are certain contextual, uniqueness that we notice actually, in this Ambedkarite Buddhism. So in that sense, between Baba Sahib Ambedkar's ideas and the Buddhist ideas, you find an interaction, interaction between these two sets of ideas, and what emerges, I would say, is an Ambedkarite Buddhism actually. And I would call this community an Ambedkarite Buddhist actually, it's a very important and interesting community, I would say. Almost 65 years before, almost there are varying figures around 500,000 people converted, taking inspiration from Baba Sahib Ambedkar, converted to Buddhism. We do not find actually, without using the state power or without using the power of the sword or a gun, whatever we can say, such a large mass of the people in the hope of a liberation, basically, converting to a different religion, actually. Recently, Nobel Prize was given for a natural experiment, it's a methodological intervention in economics, actually. I would say this is one of the very interesting natural experiment, actually, so 65 years of Buddhist conversion, what it has done to the community, actually, what changes have brought in the community, this Ambedkarite Buddhist community, because of this conversion, is something that I think is a question that the researchers who are interested in Buddhism or a Buddhist, Ambedkarite Buddhist, should think about. This now some of the questions which can motivate us to think about this approach is, what kind of practices, say ceremonies or rituals, for example, Ambedkarite Buddhists, in whose hands Baba Sahib gave Buddhism, actually, they are observing, and to what extent their beliefs are congruent with, tenets of Ambedkarite Buddhism, for example, could be one line of inquiry. The other could be, using various different disciplines and methodological approaches, not necessarily situated in traditional Buddhist studies. Now, much of the research, actually, whatever, based upon my limited familiarity with the Buddhist literature and whatever I have read, being as a practitioner of Buddhism, as well as during my last 7 years as a researcher, actually, at Brandeis, I feel much of the work is situated in, what we call Buddhist studies, theological studies, department of Pali, Pali studies, or religious studies department. What is less available or sometimes missing is, I would say, an empirical work. That empirical work. Mangesh, I got a feedback that it is not being live streamed, or is it there? And I'm not able to see the screen. Okay, you are mute.
It's live streaming on the Ambedkar Caravan. I have been sharing the links all across.
Okay. And I'm not able to see this. So the speaker is not able to see that? Because I'm directly in the Zoom.
No, not in the Zoom. It's live stream there on the Ambedkar Caravan page.
Okay.
It's there.
Right.
Because I have been circulating the.
Okay. Sorry.
Please carry on.
So what I'm saying is this. So whereas that that conversation or that work.
No, not in the Zoom. It's live stream there on the Ambedkar Caravan page.
Okay. Right. So people are saying it's fine. Okay. Uh, so that work which is being done currently, which falls more in a philosophical realm, there are two more questions I think currently are amply investigated actually. One is the philosophical aspects of the Buddhism actually. Philosophical theoretical ideas in the Buddhism actually. Drawing more from the scriptures. The second is why we converted to Buddhism, drawing on Baba Saheb's rational actually. A good amount of work that you find a lot of opinion pieces, theoretical work, the books and all that. What is missing is, if I say, considering Ambedkarite Buddhists as a unit actually of a study or an analysis. And there are different geographies, different timelines could be taken actually. And finding out how this Ambedkarite Buddhism relates to different spheres of life: economics, politics, sociology, social structure actually, education, the philosophy. I'm talking about those. And this is important today because the world is also going through a lot of difficult time actually. We find lot of authoritarianism increasing, the oppression is going up actually, and there is this question: can Buddhism offer some hope? And within that I would say, and we have those examples which make us sometimes sad. What happened, some people give a negative example about what happened, what is being done by in Sri Lanka, or what is happening in Myanmar, for example. In that sense, it becomes important to understand, can Ambedkarite Buddhists offer some hope actually? Do they present some different example of a community? How's their social coexistence with different multi-religious society actually? How's their commitment to the social justice? Their commitment to justice and equality, not just those constitutional ideals, but broader, larger human rights. How's that actually? Do they offer a hope? The second thing I would say is this phenomenal difference that has happened in the community once upon a time actually, in the just 5 decades before or 6 decades before, this community was an untouchable, and to some extent now, I would safely say that, and I have said this in one of my papers, saying that they could be considered as a vanguards of social justice today actually. How this transition has happened. And methodologically speaking, this is very interesting. This is very interesting phenomena, because you have this Ambedkarite Buddhist community which comes under scheduled caste. So the policy framework, there is no spatial policy framework for Ambedkarite Buddhists. So as a student of policy, if I have to look at, there are other scheduled castes who could be Hindu scheduled caste, or could be different non-Buddhist scheduled caste actually. There could be Buddhists who are not Ambedkarites, who do not take Ambedkar's approach to Buddhism actually. So you, in a comparative sense, you get a very interesting, some people might call it experimental group and control group kind of a phenomena actually. So there is a good amount of a comparative approaches which can be deployed for conducting the research actually. So these methodological, I find this very, very interesting. One, as I said, a natural experiment. So you have a clear-cut break in history. You look at an economic history of the state, take probably Maharashtra, because there is a significant amount of proportion of the Buddhist population now. Those who follow Ambedkar's approach to Buddhism. There is a good amount of a break. You take 1956, the politics of the Maharashtra, the economy of the Maharashtra, the educational trajectory of these people. You find a good amount of a break, a culture. Good amount of a break, and that discontinuity. Sometimes we call it a discontinuity in a research design. That discontinuity should create certain amount of a curiosity as to what is going on. Can we go down to those communities actually? Can we go down to those places on the geographies and find out what's going on? So some of the questions which can motivate us, to think about and to about research could be, and let me give those examples. So about economics, for example, do Buddhists, for example, Ambedkarite Buddhists, spend more money on education? Is there out-of-pocket expenditure, if I call it, because in India, at currently, I'm a student of education policy in this country currently. So do Ambedkarite Buddhists spend more on education than other people? Census 2001, 2011 census tells us that basically level of literacy, level of education among Buddhists is much more higher actually. So what is that? How do they take these decisions actually? How people take their decisions actually is an important area of, sometimes we have economics and people who want to study people's behavior actually. So how Buddhists think about this, how they decide actually, how they prioritize their expenses toward, for example, education and not something else actually, how they make those compromises with other priorities in their families and the lives actually. This could be one inquiry, or what they think about education. What is the meaning of education? What is the purpose of education for them actually? Do they think differently than other people actually? Has being Buddhist made some difference in their way of thinking about education? This could be one area, of thinking. I'm just giving some examples about what can. The second could be businesses, for example, or economics. Thinking. Do Ambedkarite Buddhists think differently about business and economics? I mean, sometimes people say currently that we much more prioritize education, but we didn't give much importance to entrepreneurship, for example, or economics and businesses actually. Is there something, are the Buddhist belief coming in the way of their businesses, or can certain Buddhist beliefs actually and the practices actually facilitate actually, or give a unique shape to basically? We talk about much more limitations of the capitalism. We also know there is another model people call socialism. Is Buddhist economics, or now one is definitely at the theoretical and philosophical level, people talk about Buddhist economics actually, but how in real life, in this state, for example, in various different places, those Buddhists who are into businesses, who are into economic initiatives and the ventures actually, how do they take decisions actually? How do they behave actually? Do they think differently? Is there being Buddhist influences the things that they do? I think that's something I would say should be an interesting line of inquiry. Another one I would think, and when I studied psychology for my civil services, and I still remember, I think, if I remember correctly, the JBP Sinha studies where it's, where we were told and taught that saying that the caste affect the management practices of the Indian managers, for example. So whether the Ambedkarite Buddhist managers actually at various levels, both in Indian corporate houses and the government actually, or outside, multinationals actually, are their practices different? Do the what is the relationship between management ethics and being the Ambedkarite Buddhist actually? Is there some relationship? Do they behave differently actually? Are they less hierarchical? Are they most democratic? Do they bring out better potential out of the people? Are they tempted to use shortcuts, to get more profits for their companies and compromise on certain, ethics and governance practices? Something of that kind actually I'm thinking about. The sociologists and social psychologists, for example, they can help us understand if the Ambedkarite Buddhists have democratized their families actually, or altered the gender relations to better status actually. Why is, for example, the sex ratio is better among Ambedkarite Buddhists? Why is, for example, the participation of the Buddhist women is higher? Now in India, because the majority, almost the non-Ambedkarite Buddhists are almost exception rather than a rule, I would say. To a larger extent, census data which is available currently, it approximates, I would say, to the data about Ambedkarite Buddhists actually. So this participation of the Buddhist women in the work actually, the level of education of the Buddhist women, the amount of freedom that the Buddhist women enjoy in the families, the sex ratios, and the literacy level actually, what does it tell about us? What does it tell about? Does Buddhism, Ambedkarite Buddhism, has a potential basically to make an important dent on what we call a patriarchy, and some people call it, Brahminical patriarchy, actually. So, that's another point of, that's another point of inquiry, which can reveal an interesting results, actually. I was thinking, Mangesh, about, say, Bandara, our hometown. The Vihara came there, you people, renovated that Vihara, taken over from the old generation, the young people. Now this could be an important site of an inquiry to find out, I see those women there, going regularly in the Vihara, conducting programs, actually, taking over the leadership, actually. I stay in that area. I have regularly visited that area almost for last 2 decades. And that's very impressive participation of the women, they organize the programs, they mobilize the funds, they participate. Do they participate more in a political activity? Do they participate in more, the kind of a library which has come, the impact on the children, the impact on the girls, and how the boys and girls, I find there were certain classes even for children, so how those children basically learn, how their values are shaped, actually. So what impact some ethnographer, for example, or someone who want to do a case study of that Maitreya Buddha Nivara in Nasik Nagar, Bhandara, for our audience, basically, that's that's the hometown of me and Mangesh, basically, in a state of Maharashtra. An interesting site, I would say. Which year it happened, Mangesh? That year could become then an important break, I would call it, if I have to say, a natural accident again.
That was in 1996 when I came to Bhandara. It was in 1996.
1996, right? So yes, so because I was living in that colony in 1991, up to 1990, that time that Vihara was locked, actually, so I remember that. Now that emergence of a Vihara, what some scholars would call and the sites of transformation, basically, how that has affected the gender, how that has affected the education, how that has affected the employability, how that has affected the economic status, how that has affected the politics of the people who live there, actually. Should be an interest. That's the kind of an empirical work I'm talking about. The political scientists can tell us about to what extent our politics, and not just the voting behavior. Politics is a much more broader, actually. So not just the voting behavior is congruent, is in alignment with the ideals of equality and justice, actually. Because equality and justice, Baba Sahib says in Buddha and his Dhamma, are a main concern, actually, main concern of the Buddhism, actually. That's how it interprets Buddhism, actually, and if there are occasions when we have failed in those ideals, actually. So because if Buddhists, Ambedkarite Buddhists, if their politics is it not in alignment with, if it's not in congruent with the equality and justice, actually, then somewhere have we failed, actually. And if we have failed, why we have failed, how we have failed, actually, Now that those kind of inquiries could be very reflective, actually. They can help us in making course correction, actually. The friends in science and technology discipline, for example, can tell us, do Ambedkarite Buddhists have, or do these Buddhists have a better scientific temper, actually? Are we open to adoption of the new technologies, and more specifically for human liberation, actually? Or we think about science and technology much more in abstract, and that doesn't make difference on our real lives, actually, or to what extent we fall prey to unscientific behavior, superstitions, rumor mongering, or we are too much orthodox about adoption of the technologies, actually. That's that's another thing which can make us think about a line of research in this area, actually. So these are some of the examples I have given. Policy research can help us understand, for example, why certain policies make better or worse impact on Ambedkarite Buddhists than, say, on non-Ambedkarite Buddhists or on non-Buddhist Ambedkarites. So non-Buddhist or non-Ambedkarite Buddhists. Because the policies, one is there are universal policies, so universal policies are similar to us, are same to all the people, same policy is applicable to everyone. You can take for example, right to education act, applicable to everyone, but do Ambedkarite Buddhists demonstrate a different pattern of behavior, has that policy has made a different impact on Ambedkarite Buddhists actually in those geographies where they are significant majority or a significant proportion, number one. Number two, those policies which are meant, for example, for a scheduled caste, and even within scheduled caste, when we compare Ambedkarite Buddhists who are scheduled caste and those who are not, those scheduled castes who are not scheduled caste, do some policies make a differential impact? So how does that difference come from actually? From where that difference come from? That could be another area of inquiry. And I do see there are interesting differences actually. As an activist, as the researchers, when we travel, when we find the people, there are very interesting examples which are coming up. But unfortunately, there is very less empirical work on this area. So I'm not sure why very little high quality empirical research is done by Ambedkarite Buddhist scholars or by other scholars actually. It could be lack of funds, it could be lack of training, or it could be simply an absence of the need actually, or if I use that term, academic marketability, because when you do a research, you want to publish, you want to show it on the CV actually, it needs to be valued by the department or the institution that you are affiliated to. But I'm saying different departments, and why couldn't an economics department somewhere look at economic mobility of an Ambedkarite Buddhist, which they think actually, or which they hypothesize appears to be a little bit different actually than the non-Ambedkarite Buddhist or than the non-Buddhist, say in a particular district in Maharashtra, or as a comparative study in a couple of districts actually. So I do not think that such research, such empirical research, could be out of or completely out of the place for researchers or those professionals who are in academic settings actually. However, I do, if one think about an institutional ecosystem, and now I'm coming to that point actually, if I think about an institutional ecosystem, such research actually on this community, which is around 9 million, or you can say 10 million currently, or a little more than that. We always think that the census underreports the Buddhist population. Actually, many of us believe actually, it could come from the enumerator's bias, or sometimes people do not report themselves because they might feel that, oh, if I report Buddhist, I may not get reservation benefit. There is a lot of misconception about that. So these almost 10 million people, they need their own institutions actually. We need to really promote and create certain institutions. They may not be universities actually. They could be some think tanks. They could be research centers actually, probably at the state level. The Maharashtra has a unique setting. An example, UP has a significant proportion of the Buddhists. So state of UP with its own political and a social context actually. You find a good setting for such institutional framework emerging there. So is the Maharashtra or Punjab, for example, or Tamil Nadu with a new emerging interest, Andhra Pradesh, going up, to the time of Baba Sahib's, when the conversion started, or Karnataka. So we do need, so there could be different sets of institutional frameworks, I would say. One within the community, and the community has to figure out that we must invest in new knowledge production. Our next generation, coming generations actually need to know about, how this transformation has happened, what's going on there. So that's the one set of institutions. The second is there are public institutions, but there the priorities are the different actually. And therefore those scholars who are there, those who are both Ambedkarite Buddhists and those who are not actually, they can think about this as an important area. And, as I said, this can offer a hope actually. Can Ambedkarite Buddhism be a hope, to make this world better? We know now different people in Africa, people in Austria, Hungary, you are aware about this. Actually, people in Europe, they are aware about, people are looking towards Buddhism as one of the hope, beyond even that meditation and vipassana kind of a thing, So public universities definitely can take up this one. This third thing that I feel basically is there are a lot of religious studies department in a lot of different Buddhist countries and European countries and North America. There are theology departments there actually, and there are other social sciences and humanities department actually. We need to somehow build those networks and collaborations with them actually. I was trying once, but unfortunately the some cat crossed someone's path actually. That's very un-Buddhist way of saying that actually, but I was very ambitious about trying to bring that kind of a collaborations. So we have interesting sites actually. We have access to, those are very interesting community. I mean, I just believe actually an anthropologist from a US trying to do her doctoral dissertation comes and lives in Nasik Nagar for 2 years and trying to figure out, how the marriages take place, how the various ceremonies take place, how the educational decisions are made, how women's liberation they see, how those relations are basically, what are the good and bad things happen, how their jayanti happen. It could be Belge has done his work long back. I mean, it's a good work, but there is a problem with that, So I find there are interesting collaborations which could be built, I definitely, whatever collaborations are there or done in the public, I definitely would like actually, because your social background, your philosophical orientation, your ideological orientation influence the way you problematize something actually, where you define your research questions, where you pick up your theoretical motivations actually, your methodological approaches actually. And therefore, I definitely would like and appeal actually Ambedkarite Buddhists to enter this domain actually, and to see this as an important area. There are two sets of audience which are, the currently you read some of the works and they say, no, religion is becoming more and more irrelevant in a modern world actually, religion is something that we need to go away. There is a more and more secularization of the public. I agree with that actually. But Baba Sahib, I say religion for masses is an important thing actually, and this conversion, if it has made a difference actually, we need to find out, had it made a difference, has it made a positive difference, So this two sets of people, one who say all religions are bad actually, or the religion is really not required for that. I do find that kind of criticism, one coming from definitely the Marxist, some of the Dalit Marxists even, for example, I would say, their critique of, that Buddhism hasn't really helped actually, or it has to some extent brought down the rigor of, that movement for liberation of the, within quotation, Dalits actually, I do not agree with that actually. I believe actually Baba Sahib's ideas and the Buddhist beliefs and practices have interact, and that has come in one of my paper, very soon I hope it comes out, that these two things together have really made, and if you take examples, we find very disproportionately higher participation of Ambedkarite Buddhists in various movements of equality and justice actually. They are in the forefront. If there are atrocities taken place, they are in the forefront actually. You go to different places, you find them available. What makes them volunteer? In fact, I would say that has made some of the Ambedkarite Buddhists more defensive. Are we there in more number actually? Are we not careful about diversity? Is leadership too much within code dominated by Ambedkarite Buddhists? I would say no. I mean, that's something, people should, a community which participate disproportionately higher in liberation movement, actually, in a social justice movement, in a movement for equality, in an egalitarian politics, needs to be congratulated, needs to be celebrated, actually, rather than being defensive about this, actually, it's an example. So I do not think about Ambedkarite Buddhist community on itself by not participating is going to lose anything, because it has achieved so much. Some of us who are first generation learners actually in our families actually, in 1 or 2 generations we made wonders actually, So this is an interesting community, I would say. So there are a lot of misconceptions about that. People actually need to go to the communities and study and bring that out. So one, for really educating and providing evidence for the skeptics actually, definitely, but for ourselves actually, for our own course correction, for our own future actually, for our own training, for teaching our children actually, for the benefit of those who are interested actually, what Buddhism do. There are people who are curiously observing. Baba Sahib in his blueprint to Buddhism says that with time, many and many more backward classes will enter Buddhism. In Maharashtra, some of the communities from the what we call VJNT, for example, the communities from the OBC, Upre Sahab's example, people who were inspired by Sadhunke Sahab, they have embraced Buddhism actually. The more and more communities are coming, more and more people want to learn. So we need more and more examples. The census data is there. Census, I did not get an access to the raw census data actually. Census data could be one way. NSSO examples, National Sample Survey data could be another. We can do a large-scale sample surveys actually. If you invest enough amount of the money, we can do ethnographies, we can do case studies actually. What I'm talking about, Buddhism enters in our tables, what we call as an analytic or a variable actually, where when I'm looking at the people's levels of education, when I'm looking at literacy, when I'm looking at the people's income level, when I'm looking at proportion of the expenditure that the people from their total income that they devote to education or the health actually, or when I'm looking at certain indicators which indicate me gender equality, Buddhism in that table appear me as one of the variable actually, or the religion appear as one of the variable actually. And see, does that make a difference when I run a regression, for example, or whatever model I run? Does that from a quantitative perspective also actually? Now, we do not have a data. My sense is we do not in this country, we are a little reluctant and conservative in capturing one caste data. That's why we are not conducting the caste census. And the second, this religious data on religion actually more frequently and more comprehensively actually. So the communities, the research centers and the think tanks built by the community itself can do a large scale survey actually. ASER, a largely annual status of education report, is largely a volunteer driven survey, for example. Why can't we do a survey of Ambedkarite Buddhists and try to find out what's going on? It will be not difficult, Mangesh, to get 100 volunteers in a district of Bhandara actually, who will, if you design a survey and try to conduct certain state of a survey actually. So these, I would say, these are very initial thoughts about what I think could be a research agenda for a Buddhist actually in the future. And I think this next 10 years could be an interesting time frame for us actually. When we celebrate 75 years, we tell ourselves and we tell the world actually that this is where the Ambedkarite Buddhist community has reached. It has done good, it has done bad. This is where we will have third or even fourth generation Ambedkarite Buddhists actually to teach. Last point, and then I will conclude actually, and then we can take it, if there are questions actually, could be the dissemination actually, the dissemination of the research output actually. It definitely could be in the form of the the research products, like generally goes in the peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed journals actually, or the books actually. But the more important also is basically much more accessible literature actually, informed by evidence actually, for the larger community, for the community leaders, for social movements, for Buddhist organizations actually. And it could be in various forms actually. It could be audio, visual, literary texts, and all those things which are coming up actually. This also to a certain extent will train us in archiving whatever we do. I was giving example of Bhandara, for example. So what kind of a documentation that we have actually, what kind of an archive that we do actually. That's a very interesting. When I was writing a paper, I came across in US what they have done. Some researchers, they have gathered all the tapes of those black leaders who were connected to the church actually, or those who brought the black liberation theology in their speeches actually. They gathered all those tapes and they gone through the tapes, and they found out that basically, they found out that the religion, the liberation theology, the Christian liberation theology, the black Christian liberation theology was a very essential part of basically that civil rights movement's motivation actually. So very interesting part actually. They are not mutually exclusive actually. In 60s, some researchers said this, saying that the religion acted as a theme actually on the civil rights movement as far as blacks were concerned. But later, those using the same data set, certain researchers, they reversed that conclusion actually. So it is here I will take a pause And here from you, we are now 6:39. So yes, I'm in that 30 to 40 minutes, as you said. Yeah.
Now, Tanuj, I think it's the way you started off with the natural methods of inquiries, and a very interesting take on evolving research methodologies that people generally are not much aware about. What I found interesting in your presentation was the way you opened up different threads, which generally we don't consider to be the topic of research. And I think the kind of transformation that you would like to measure, or use the word calculate, as to what has happened in last 65 years, even in the micro spaces like Bhandara, or Chandrapur, or for that matter, a village in Kanpur,
Yes.
or Lucknow, or even in South India, in Karnataka, because I think since 1956, Buddhism has been the part and parcel of these quote unquote Ambedkarite movement. They have become so close that it's very difficult to take these two strands away from each other. It's not just a case of Maharashtra, but you have yourself lived in all different parts of India, and you know that Buddhism has been always so much intertwined with the liberation movement. And the point that you were talking about as to the level, the transformation at the level of the communities, at the level of a small vihara, can speak a volumes about the psychology of the people at that level, as to how that's making an impact. I do not see much questions there, but I would like to ask you a particular question. You talked about the institutional sort of a backing that is needed to undertake such kind of research work, because it's not academically marketable area where people would like to go into and really sell their whatever findings. But I think, do you see a similar kind of studies? You referred to a study done in among the Black Americans, as to how they listen to the records of the churches, the speakers of the churches, and they try to find out that narration of liberation theology, theology there. Like, you yourself has been a part of a lot of public discussions and debate. Do you see that this, what is it called, the Buddhism is coming into a kind of a natural discourse there in terms of understanding what is happening? For example, I will say that people like Manyavar Khapade Sahab and Kanshiram, they were not just the ground level activists, but they had this a mind that has gone into understanding the societies at that level, and from there devising their strategies. So do you see a kind of a similar approach? I'm sorry, my question is not direct, but indirect, in the sense that, do you see that kind of community research, not like having those theoretical frameworks, but community research are feeding into the movement? Like, you talking about the women participating at large in the vihara. It's not just true about Bandara, but it's at it's the case at large. Everywhere you see the larger participation of women. So how do you see this, understanding what's happening, then feeding it back into your social movement, and again, based on those experiment, understand, sorry if I'm making it a little bit complicated, but do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely understand that. I do see a possibility there, actually, and I think it should happen there. I do see a possibility. The community and the researchers, actually, need to join hands, and need to join hands. And that's where I say, the community-driven research could be a possibility, actually. I do not see why it shouldn't have an academic value, if I use that word, actually.
Yeah. I got it.
See, I am studying economics in the Department of Social Sciences in IIT Bombay.
Yeah.
Okay, and I want to understand the economic mobility of a scheduled caste in Maharashtra, for example. I have a different some kind of questions about economic mobility. What I have to understand is, basically, do I have a Buddhism, their religion, as a variable actually there, actually? That doesn't disturb I don't think that disturb my value, actually. That currently, my hunch is that currently is not happening currently. Now, that may not happening for political reasons, because there is a certain level of killing by silence actually happening. that might not be happening in case of the Ambedkarite Buddhist scholars and early career researchers, established scholars as well as early career researchers themselves, because they somehow are hesitant to do that actually, hesitant to do that. So I do not, I as a public policy student, for example, will be very interested to understand how education policies make differential impact on Ambedkarite Buddhist and non-Ambedkarite Buddhist actually, and there can I collaborate with the community. So I do see a possibility in a different parts of the country. As you said, there are different viharas, there are different earlier days they used to be Buddha Mandal, Ramabai Mandal, and whatever, all different names, Siddharth Society and
whatnot, yeah.
Whatnot. So many, those groups actually, there is a very interesting terminology which is used in a social movement theory for this actually. These are the very important, these are called agency-led institutions. There is one Morris who says that, so these institutions are very important actually, and these institutions have played very, very important. My growing as an activist, my growing as someone who wants to transcend those social, economic, and political constraints has to do with the ecosystem that I have grown into actually, and that ecosystem had those institutions actually, those playing of the songs, those reading of the small books and all that. I think it's possible and it is doable. It should be done actually. This Ambedkarite Buddhist community should come in a research mainframe, means research mainstream, occupy, I would say rather. It should occupy a research mainstream, and we have enough number of scholars now in social sciences, humanities, physical sciences actually, even climate change to what you were talking about. Are these people a little bit different actually? Are their vulnerabilities different? Are their responses different actually? When you talk about, so I think it is doable. It should be done. I do see a possibility. And if it is not doable, we should make it done. That's what Baba Sahib expected from us. And that's the commitment we can make on such day with Baba Sahib.
Tanojji, it might not be a direct question, but there is a kind of a strand that has been emerging in Buddhist world called the socially engaged Buddhism, and you are well aware of that strand. And I was involved in one developing a syllabus for the Pune University. They started one course a couple of years back called Socially Engaged Postgraduate Diploma in Socially Engaged Buddhism. And one of their difficulties has been as to how to make it socially community, engaged course. And right now, like some of the friends are thinking about, they are in the education academy, and they're thinking about how to bring these ideas of transformation based on Buddhist philosophy into the academic sort of discourses. So as a researcher, as a scholar who has been not only being a researcher, but also I would say activist researcher. Let's call you an activist researcher. So as an activist researcher, where do you see that, this community, this social engagement, and how do you see that aspect of Buddhism emerging in the society in terms of its engagement with communities? And if there are courses like socially engaged Buddhist courses, how that those courses can be made more accountable to the community, and how the students studying there can be, trained in the way you have been talking about.
So this socially engaged Buddhism, I had a very interesting discussion. I was just trying to retrieve that note. Actually, I had written on, Sarvodaya movements in Sri Lanka, actually taking inspiration from the Gandhi, and this socially engaged Buddhism. If you read Baba Sahib, see, if Buddhism is not socially engaged, then what it is? Are you there, Mangesh? Because I find okay. Something on the screen. Okay. So, so if Buddhism is not socially engaged, then what it is actually, Buddhism at its core has to be socially engaged, when you talk about relations between man and man, when we talk about oppression, when we talk about suffering, actually, the Buddhism comes in a picture actually. So Buddhism essentially has to be socially engaged. The problem with academic institution is actually, I think, that we have a very less, what we call an empirical work actually. We do not train our students to do empirical work, to go to the communities, actually, do their field work, to get the data, to get the information, to learn from the community, to come back actually. I think that's a more of academic orientation or methodological orientations of the faculty which are there. And I definitely would appeal the academic community and even our friends in Pune University and you, saying that this empirical work, this field engagement has to be a very integral part of students' learning. Actually, it's a very important part of their learning and their assignments, their homework, the term papers that they do, the research that they conduct. Actually, it should be, because we have good amount of work, I would say, coming from the secondary sources, coming from opinion pieces, the philosophical side, there are many people who are doing this actually. Now, what is not currently available is, go to that community and find out what's going on there actually, using your different disciplinary lenses. That's what I would say. You're on mute.
Very important question that has come is, like, how do we lay out a scheme for creating, you already touched upon it, but how do you lay down an ecosystem of the institutions plus the community, and where do we really begin? What would be our first step in terms of this institutional ecosystem vis-a-vis the community out there at large, and where do we see that the meeting point between these two, and how do we hit that point where the institutional ecosystem we evolve? On one hand, there is a community on a movement, and I'm sure that there is some kind of an intersection, you being yourself an intersection, staying in academia but also engaged in the field, and that's an intersecting point. So how do you see that? How do we hit that intersecting point, Dr. Tanoj?
So one we should definitely start with I would say, is an appreciation of the need for research, basically, need for research of the kind that I spoken. That's a very, very important. But I think to some extent that need or the purpose is not felt. There is no felt need about this. That's a very important. When I talked about ecosystem, why I use the word ecosystem is because there is a community-led institutions, there are public institutions, there are private, there are international. They're not just a research, there are publications, for example. There are people who use the research output and go to the community. There are social movements, actually. I would say we have many more people think about building academies, for example. You lived in one such academy, Nagaloka and Manuski ecosystem, you lived actually. There is another academic which you keep on posting the pictures about. A Yotman, it is coming. There are many more people who are trying to build certain things. I'm saying, are we also thinking about a center or an institution which conducts or which really catalyzes or which acts as an interface that you're talking about, for a research on Ambedkarite Buddhism, so design of such an institution, actually, it might be a small, it doesn't need to be a large enough. Actually, there are many institutions which have started small. I mean, you don't need to start with a big university. Actually, I know you are thinking about some Buddhist universities. Actually, we don't need to think at that. We might have a university with 10, 15, 20, 25 people, actually, a small center, actually. But that center has all, the theoretical, methodological, and technical capacity, an ability to network with different actors and stakeholders. We can have them conferences and those, workshops, and bring these different stakeholders together. I know. So that's the kind of, I would say, those different threads need to be brought together. So I see a possibility. We need a much more, this kind of a conversation may not be, we need a much more detailed deliberations, actually. How do we promote such institution, from where the funds come? There are many more people who would like to fund for establishment of the Buddha Vihara. I know there are multi-crore Buddha Viharas and the sites are coming. At the same time, we would choose that there are multi-million or a multi-crore research centers should come out, actually, and people should be willing to fund that. People should be willing to contribute for that.
We are now nearing the end of our discussion today, but there is a very urgent pressing question that has been asked by one gentleman, Samson Daniel, and I think we need to look at before we end, and after that question we will end. The question goes like this: that Dalit Christians who got converted are not accepted as Dalits today in this free India. We choose Christianity, not Buddhism. We are the same people, those who suffered in the pre-British rule. I didn't get the question properly, but what do you think about this question of?
Yeah, it's not a question, but that sentiment needs to be really appreciated. I completely agree with that, and they are Dalits, they are ex-untouchables, and they need to be recognized. There is a demand for constitutional recognition at the scheduled caste, both among the Muslims and the Christians. I can give you one example, Mangesh. In 2005, I was invited by some nuns and fathers in a very old church of Uti.
Wow.
To talk about Buddhism, actually. I asked them, why are you asking me to talk about Buddhism in a church in front of the nuns and fathers? Said, we convert same sentiments. We converted to Christianity. And he said, we are suffering now. And you tell us, is there something hopeful or promise in a Buddhism, actually? In 2006, then in Nagpur, in that golden jubilee of the conversion, one nun and one father came from that congregation to observe what's going on there. I used to go to that Tamil Nadu Theological Seminary in Madurai, actually, where there is a Dalit Research Center, Father John Jair, and they appreciate that fact, actually. So they need a conversation between our brothers who are in Christianity, who are in Islam, and elsewhere, actually, and they need to be constitutionally recognized as scheduled caste or all. Definitely, that's a long view. I completely appreciate that.
There has been, a sentiment here as well that whatever you talk today is so valuable that it has to reach to the rural areas and the masses, because the research or whatever the discussion like this should not be confined to just narrow walls. So there has been an appeal from one beloved well-wisher of yours that your lecture, this particular talk needs to be transcribed and maybe translated in local languages like Marathi or Hindi and Tamil and so on and so forth. So I think there is a request from one of your beloved admirers to really transcribe this wonderful presentation and get some people to translate it into local languages. So I think you.
My thanks to the team, actually.
Okay. So Tanoj bhai, thank you, Dr. Saab. Thank you so much for joining in today, and it's a wonderful to have you here and to discuss about these wonderful ideas. And we will continue to have this discussion in the future. And we would like to know more from you about not only this, but about your research in the educational area, about what you have done in your academics. So maybe one day we would like to invite you again. Till then, thank you so much for joining in today.
Thank you, Jai. Best wishes to all the people and you on this occasion.
थांबून जा 1 मिनिट.